Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. And sorry, Fern, I did not ask. Has anyone submitted public comment? I skipped that on the.
Kimberly, did anyone submit one that you know of? I did not receive anything. That would be a no, Marissa.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear. All right. Dr. Macy.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. I appreciate everyone's time this morning, and I do apologize for the amount of time it's taken in this pre-design phase. I want to assure you that there has been a lot of work completed behind the scenes in order to equip the board with the most possible up-to-date information. And our goal today is really to share information that Corrigan and Clark has gathered, put together, some of the pre-design work, to have a more informed discussion at the open session on the 24th. So we are not looking for decisions. We are truly just trying to bring everybody up to speed. Throughout this process, we have tried to conduct small meetings to keep the board informed, but through feedback with the board, we felt like in order to really share this particular information, we wanted to get everyone together so that everyone could hear everyone else's questions, dialogue, and also develop some questions between now and Monday in case we need Corrigan and Clark to gather and provide some more information. So Greg, are you going to take the lead, or is Rick going to take the lead?
I think that Aaron and I are going to run it, and Rick will comment where it's appropriate.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and begin sharing, that would be great.
Okay. Here it comes.
Let me know when y'all can see this.
I see it.
All right.
Everybody else see it?
Mm-hmm.
We can see it.
Okay, we're glad to be here this morning. I'm going to cover a little ground that is familiar with you, and it's important to do it simply because we've covered a lot of ground and haven't talked for a while. So I think reminding everybody of some things we've spoken about previously makes sense. So next slide, please. Okay. So y'all have seen this diagram. It's sort of what we call a constraints diagram. It just explains the challenges that are on the site that are going to inform some of the choices we make. It's, again, Highdown Road being a complicated thing, and we've all talked about how the tennis courts are not available as a place to build something, and I think everybody remembers most of the things that are on this slide. So next slide, please. So initially, we had looked at different options about how to proceed, and had come to the conclusion as a group, I think, that for a number of reasons, the A site was likely the right place to start. And you always assume that not building a fresh new building is going to be one of the less expensive ways of doing it. And I think that was partly the cause for assuming that that was the right place to go. And by the way, in this process, costs have been driving choices. We've been looking closely at what we anticipate the cost being. And it's not unusual at this point for numbers to be a little bit high because we're conservative in the way we look at things. The last thing we want to have happen is to tell you everything's good and then find out you're $3 or $4 million over budget. So we're going to deliberately sort of inflate the costs a little bit just to make sure we've covered ourselves for any eventuality. Slide, please. So I'm going to let Aaron speak to this because there are a number of viable options for how to proceed. And then we found a new one that we think is a revisitation of something we had spoken about in the past, but I think it makes sense for us to reconsider at this point. Next slide, please.
It's a little slow.
And just as a reminder before I hand it off to her for the time being, this is what we had shared with you long ago about this is a process that we understand as a thing that, if you remember the shampoo commercials, it's rinse, lather, and repeat, or I guess you know what I mean. And in this case, it's data gathering, analysis, scenarios, and then synthesize a solution. But the lower part is that I was speaking to a second ago, it's repeat as required. So we've learned some new things. We know that we need to gear shift a little bit to make things align in the way we want, and that's what we're doing. So this is all a normal part of the process. And I'd like to restate with what Dr. Macy said, that we are not expecting a solution or an answer from you today on direction. We're talking to you about things that you have to consider. And by the way, we figured out a way, I think, to let the schedule slide a little bit and still keep you on track. And it actually may work better for you a little bit because it gets you out of a bidding timeline that would have you competing with a bunch of other people for the same contractors. We delayed just a little bit. We'll sidestep that issue, and you'll likely get better numbers as a result. So next slide, please.
Let me go into the A.
Here we go.
I'm going to back up a little bit back to the agenda and talk a little bit. And good morning again for those of you who, when I first joined, have now joined. So as Greg mentioned, and as we all know, the consensus was to really look at that option A on the middle school site and how could that be repositioned for a new administration. So we really honed in and looked at the site in 4 different ways. We looked at option, what we're calling A1, which is renovating the existing building, an addition, plus a connection to the new addition of the administration building to the existing middle school. So you have that bridge if and when it's needed. Option A1 and A2 are the same in what we're doing to the site. The only difference that we priced is A1, you would remain in the existing administration building during construction. And A2 would be to find and lease temporary office space during the construction. So as we went down that path, there were some challenges that we wanted to make sure that we were testing all options. So we developed an A3, which is demolishing the existing building in its entirety and providing new construction on the same site, still with the connection, and the temporary office space was proving to be a little bit more cost effective because the length of construction was greatly reduced. Option A4, we looked at, well, what if there wasn't a connection right now? Some of that program was never part of the programming document. It was nice to have. So what if we reduced the square footage a little bit and provided a new construction building with temporary office space? Where did that get us?
Which, just to interject, did not preclude you doing the addition later on that would make the physical connection. I'd like to restate what Aaron just said. The value and the cost of adding the connective tissue, while valuable and important to you, was never within the scope of the original program numbers. And that's partly why the numbers are higher than they need to be.
Right. And as we looked at that connection piece to work with the current cost opinion that we were aiming for, that connection piece was getting smaller and smaller. And we really didn't feel that it had the power that it could in the future when something is needed and programmed out specifically for that connection. So that's when we started looking at a new site option. We wanted to make sure that we were really investigating every component and what that could be. But what we're going to do, we're going to go through the options of the A for you all. We understand that you haven't seen this yet, and all of our behind the scenes work we're going to share today. So we're going to share what we have planned for option A in order to price in the pre-design phase, what we have done it for option B, and what option B brings to the table, because this is new to you all, and then start comparing cost estimates to have more of a...
Aaron, before you kick it off, let me add just one point. None of the schemes that you're going to see today are actually a design. They're simply taking the program and starting to fit them into the envelope that we think the building is going to be. And so don't get stuck in a relationship or I think this should be there or anything like that. We're going to completely revisit all those choices when you make a decision about which direction to go. And if we have to do a couple of them so you can compare and contrast, we're happy to do that as well.
Yeah, and to the point, this is pre-design, and what we have named all of this is test fit, massing study. We don't consider this design. We'll get into the design of the actual building and interior layout during what our phase called schematic design. Right now, we're testing the site to determine, does this fit? What square footage does this space take up? And if it fits on the site in the magnitude that we're showing it, what's the constructability level of this building on the site per the placement? And that is really the cost estimates, and you'll see the changes between the two. Right. So going to our A1 and A2 sites, looking at that A site in detail. This is the taking the existing building and adding an addition. So we went back to the program and looked at that approximately 26,000 square feet. But then we lowered it just slightly, knowing that there might be some things that are shifting here and there that aren't determined. And then adding a connection back to the middle school. So this dark gray box is the existing middle school. The dark gray box is the existing administration. Where we're calling out a secondary entry is your current main entry, and then moving the main entry to the new building in a different location. We're anticipating to able to fit the square footage within the space between the existing admin and the middle school. That would be about a 1.5 story addition with a 2-story portion in the middle, with a small connection on that lower story to the middle school. So this is the site that we looked at, and this is about the geometry that we played with. And it's something worth noting in this site plan is you note that we've started to develop a courtyard here, which is very nice, but it's also very challenging to construct. To get crews back here, the machinery that's needed to be able to construct the second half of the building. If north is to my right, it would be the south side of the building. We have that retaining wall because the grade does change greatly between the middle school courtyard and then the upper at the administration level, as we're all aware. So this building was posing some challenges from the get-go with site constraints. Again, concept mass study, what could this look like? Taking the existing building and adding on to that and a geometry, and this is floor-to-floor levels that made sense, but still able to give more height to the addition piece than you guys are experiencing today in your current building. And then at what point do we have to drop down to make that connection to the middle school, and how big of a square footage could we give to that interior?
And by the way, this strategy that you see sort of represented here is consistent with how the building was added onto in the last round. So it utilized the green glass to make the connection to the roofing elements consistent. And then it used this concrete frame and the masonry colors as a means of making it a campus. And so I think this strategy will provide you with a pretty elegant building that is consistent with the way the rest of the campus looks and acts. And so we think there's a good building in there if you can afford it, but it's a pricey thing because of the connective piece.
Just another view, more focused on the existing. We would, in our pricing options, we have asked our estimators to price removing the portion of the roof that's above the current boardroom and creating a 4-sided clear story to bring natural light more into the middle of the space.
And could actually get down to the lower level in that means as well. I mean, there are a number of options about how to use the daylight to make sure that the building that's the original piece is as good as the new construction.
So I'm going to jump to, so I'm going to go through what we call our test fits. Again, this isn't our space plan. That is different. That's more of a design where we'll start to see the ins and outs. This is to develop adjacencies and to make sure that the entire program fits at the size that we programmed it during that Excel document that was shared in the last board meeting. So to familiarize yourselves, this line is our existing building, our new addition, and then we'll have the roof below of the middle school. This is grade level, so we are at the level that you walk into the current administration now. And as I pointed out during the site plan, the new main entry, visitor entry, would be down here, coming into a secure vestibule, a lot of public facing spaces right away, that boardroom, reception, some meeting areas right away. So for people that are coming directly to meet and then leaving, they don't have to transverse through the building into the different apartments. Lots of what we're calling public facing areas, as well as more of the noisy areas, the break area, the lounge, areas for you all to gather. connecting an exterior patio to both the addition and the existing building. It's important to have a secure area, so we would have doors that would be on hold opens. So during events, evenings, weekends, that this space was used for general community members, we could shut and lock these doors so the general public would have access to all the spaces they need without the ability to go back into the different departments. So really coming through, opening up an area between the addition and the existing building is needed. This would be more of your offices. We start to get into the departments. The goal here is to keep the people in the departments on the same floor. Each department getting some of their own meeting areas, their own collaboration areas. Each area will have a work area, some storage, and the necessary utilities. We heard a couple of times that potentially a secondary entrance for community members would be useful, that this could still remain an ingress egress for back of house to go and meet said person at that door.
And again, this is all just a starting point about how these relationships work. And so don't get stuck on any of it, because we're going to reinvest in it as soon as you make a decision about what direction we're going to go.
Right. We're just making sure that we're hitting the points of the program and putting that program into a visual. This is a glorified bubble diagram, if you will. So moving upstairs, what does that look like? Taking the stairs of that new addition and coming up. And again, I'm going to zoom in. This is a office suite. So again, we have that.
It hasn't advanced yet.
It's advanced on mine.
Yeah, I'm still seeing the previous plan.
Are you? Okay. Well, this is interesting because here we go. Let's see. This is.
There it goes.
Okay. I apologize. I didn't realize Google Meet, if we were sharing the screen, it just stayed. Okay, guys. So I'm going to show you this a little close up then. I was zoomed in on my side and you guys were trying to read Sanskrit. Okay, new existing building. That new addition that allows the public facing. The large boardroom, again, most of our on the ground level where you enter would be a lot of the public facing amenities and program. Right now, I do want to point out, we're showing 140 visitor seats in the boardroom for this plan, just so you guys can get a sense of scale and how large that boardroom would be in comparison to the rest of the space. All right, now let's go upstairs. Upstairs. So this is more of a private office suite. Again, envision some glass walls with lockable doors. So evenings and weekends, the general public, if they do wind up the stairs, they are constrained in this lobby area. But behind here is where there's offices, meeting rooms, open collab areas, work areas, things, again, keeping those departmentals intact in place is how we got our office counts on the different levels. Now I'm jumping down to the lower level. So this is lower level of your existing building. In this scheme, we do have the ability to maintain the print area where it is and give it a little bit more elbow room. Keeping the mechanical room where it is, which is replacing what's needed in terms of the units and the lines. Most of the lower level we envision in this option could be used for closed and open storage for various departments to share, whether it's records, supplies, paper, etc. We know you guys have a lot of storage needs. And then the area that does have access to grade and some nice natural light, this could become an open gather area. And what we mean open gather, it could be an all call conferencing area, large screen here, tables. It could be an area for training. It could be used in a myriad of ways, but this is a nice space. We didn't want to put it in with the storage areas. Now looking to that connection piece. And again, this was something that we didn't really program or talk to anyone about yet. So if an option on this A site with the connection is the desirable, we would like to have more discussions. But in order to kind of simplify the footprint in order to maintain a reasonable budget at this point, as well as make some just large scale swaths guesses, is to open that exterior entry and creating a new egress out and having some meeting areas, whether it's a classroom, a large meeting that could be separated into smaller meetings, open gather area, and then you have access to your vertical circulation in terms of an elevator that would take you up into the main floor of the public area of the new addition. Now, I'm assuming what's showing is still the.
It hasn't changed yet.
I'm learning. Okay. So now I'm sure you guys are all wondering, what is the site comparison or cost comparison? But I do want to mention, so A3, that one site where we did new construction throughout with the connection. So the test fit that we did was very similar in scale and same square footage. We didn't give a planned test fit. We took the program and we took what we learned from the addition piece and what we needed to put into the new construction if the existing building came down, and that's how we priced it that way. A4, what you'll see in A4 is all new construction, but we did take the square footage and we reduced it to see what that does to the overall price.
Aaron, there are no numbers on the screen yet.
Right, Rick's about to share.
Okay.
So I'm gonna stop and he's gonna share his.
Okay. Give me a second. Do I need to do a window? Let me see here. Do this.
And that share screen window.
Okay. Here, I do this. Are you seeing the Excel sheet? Okay. So this sheet that I'm going to show you here, it's similar to the sheet that we did before. And like Aaron discussed, we have all the options. We added the A4 and B1, and we eliminated the option C that we had before. So one thing I'll say is that this is all very preliminary. At this stage, we don't have anything drawn. You know, we have boxes and things like that. So a lot of our cost data is based on reference projects and cost per square foot, but we are putting several sets of eyes on this. We're looking at this internally with our architectural team. We have a construction team in our Aurora office that is a resource, and we have a third-party estimator. So we're kind of, everybody's looking at this, and we're really testing and spending a lot of times, you know, working on what we think the numbers should be based on the kind of limited information that we have at this point. But one thing I want to, as we go through this, you'll notice that the cost for options A1 and 2 went up, and like Aaron was talking about, part of that is because the square footage went up, and it basically, as you saw in the diagrams, we're connecting 2 points. We're connecting 2 buildings, both in plan and elevation, and we're adding square footage to make that connection and that circulation to get to the middle school. So that's added space that wasn't in the program for the administration building. And it's kind of a little inefficient because we're trying to connect 2 dots rather than just building something out freely and not having those kind of connection points. So what it did is, in the previous estimates, we had kind of 2 options. One that showed a 26,000 square foot building, and then we had another option that had 21. So now that we've actually laid out something, what's happening is options A1 and A2, you can see the total square footage is higher. It's about 28,000. The A3 option, which would it'd be a new building, but it's still connecting to the middle school. So you have that added connective piece that's tracking at, you know, it's almost 25,000. And then the A4 and B1 options that we're going to show you, those are kind of down to the minimal program because it's just the admin building and there's no connections, and it's really the most efficient way to get your square footage where it needs to be. The rest of this sheet is very similar to what we had before. We spent a lot of times like this 404 square foot that we're using for our square footage. I'll just pop over real quick, and this is the sheet that backs up how we calculated that, and it's going by construction division. And we're doing estimates, we're looking at previous projects, we're running cost per square foot, and like I said, those three groups that I mentioned earlier, we're all kind of comparing notes to come up with this number. So that kind of drives what the cost is for the building itself, for the new construction options. In the option where we're doing an addition, we have that cost goes up a little bit because the footprint is a little bit smaller. And like Aaron was talking about earlier, it's a little more challenging to build between the two buildings, and especially getting in that little courtyard area that she was talking about. So that's something we got to consider that kind of inflates the cost a little bit. So I'm just going to drop down to this yellow line, and what that line is representing is, we've added all our contractor costs, we added in the design contingency, and what this line is basically representing is if we put this out to bid, next year, whenever we're done, with the design, this is what we think the number would come in at. So you see the range here, right at 11 million for the B1 option that we're going to show you here in a minute, in the 11 to 12 range for the A4 option, which would be a new building not connected to the middle school. And then the other ones are getting higher. The other thing I was going to drop down to this, I did this little analysis, and what this is showing, these two lines, 55 and 56, is I'm comparing the building sizes to option B, which is, and really A4, which are just the basic admin buildings. And you can see, with A3, we're adding about 17% to square footage, and the other options, A1, because of the connection of the two buildings, it's adding a little bit over 30%. And then you can also see how the cost is comparing. So to B1, all these comparisons are to B1. So A4 is really pretty close to B1, but it's still higher. Again, the other two are higher, partly because of the square footage increase, and partly just because of some of the challenges working in that area between the admin building in the middle school. So this lower number on 53 is kind of the all-in total project cost. We add in some construction contingencies, and we had the soft costs, which are fees, furniture, technology, and like we talked about before, the soft costs we're holding are at about 13%, which was very similar. I think it was more like 11 or 12% for Prop L. So we're being a little conservative there just to make sure we have a decent budget when we get to those discussions on furniture and technology and those sorts of things. And if anybody wants, I'm going to keep going, but if you have questions, or feel free to stop me and ask, but I'll keep going unless anybody has any questions. The other thing we did is we added some options to these. So what we did is we pulled out the widening of High Down Lane and relocating that AT&T gear. We're holding that as a separate number. And I did bump up the relocation of the gear. We have made a formal request to AT&T to come out and look at that and give us, tell us what we need to do to relocate that gear and what the cost would be. But that work has not been done yet, so we don't know what that is. So we're just kind of speculating. We kind of raised that number up just to be safe. And we do feel pretty comfortable with the 100,000 to widen the road and make the storm sewer adjustments. But we're holding about a $300,000 budget for that work. And then there's two options when Aaron shows you some of the next plan. There's a loop road that runs around the grass field, and then the field hockey field to kind of regrade that. And we have two options: one to do it as grass, and one to upgrade the field to artificial turf. So we're saying 400,000 for the grass field with the loop road, and 800,000 for the artificial turf with the loop road. So
and Rick, let me interject just for a second. What you're going to see in a second is effectively a light version of a master plan. because we think that the direction this is now leaning towards is actually a really sound one in a whole lot of different ways. And there's been talk, at least, that the turf field might belong over where the existing fields currently are, not on the site we're talking about, but an improved version of the one that's deeper in the site. So don't think of this all necessarily as part of the scheme we're now discussing, but rather just another part of that scheme as it unfolds.
Okay. One thing I wanted to show you before we move back over to the plans is when we talk about the design contingency. Right now, we're holding that it's like an estimating allowance because of the minimal information that's really drawn and there's no design. We hold a number to kind of count for unknowns. And what we do, I'm going to show you this sheet. And this is showing some historical track record with our in-house estimators on estimating that we've done from programming, kind of like we are now, schematic design, design development, until final bids. And what we're trying to do is keep this, for any of you that were involved with Prop L, it was a little challenging in design in that we had a cost increase that occurred when we did our estimate at each design phase, and then we had a VE and redesign, and that's very disruptive to the design phase. It slows things down and it causes problems, and it's also you're thinking you're going to get something that later on we have to tell you that you're not going to get. So we hold these design contingencies, and I'm showing here that it's 15 to 20%. We have it at 12 right now on your building at this stage, but then as we go forward, we would drop that number down because there's more information drawn in each phase and the estimates are getting more accurate and there's less unknown. So we haven't done, we're waiting for the survey to come in. We don't have that at this point. We'll eventually be getting geotech information, once we know where the building's going and those sorts of things. So as we go through the process, we design more, we have more information. Once we get through governing approvals with the city, those sorts of things, then the design is more solid and our estimates are more accurate and we can start to reduce it. But our goal would be, as we work through this process, whatever the option is and whatever the budget is, we're working hard to keep it at that same budget as we move forward through this process. So I just wanted to share that with you. Before we move back to the design, does anyone have any questions about any of the estimating stuff we're showing you? Okay, I guess then, Aaron, if you want to take the screen back, I'll see if I can. I don't know if I have to stop sharing or if you just.
Yeah, I can override you.
Okay.
Okay, so as Rick mentioned, we're going to talk about what we talked about at the beginning is our kind of reflecting. And option A, as viable as it could be, we wanted to understand, is this the best solution for this building at this time? So what have we learned? We went back to all 4 sites and kind of did a quick evaluation again. D, we continued to rule out because athletic components are off limits. Option C, it would be an even higher cost estimate and a longer construction schedule. So we didn't kind of dive into that. So that left B. And as we looked at B a little bit more stringently and understood that there was the availability to build a building and keep the athletic fields, it became a pretty viable solution. So what does the option of building over here provide? It eliminates the need to move off site for the administration staff during construction. So it's cost effective in that realm as well as a little bit more safe. It does not impact the athletic fields here. It reduces that challenge of constructing between 2 existing buildings on a steep grade and moving that fiber line that currently runs between the building down to the facilities department. It allows for more option-filled future additions, meaning if we were to build here, and that's still an option, but that does constrain what happens to the connection and this building in the future. It becomes one of the more cost-effective with the current budget. And it maintains this existing building until a little bit more time has gone through and maybe some things become more aware of how to utilize this A site to be more beneficial for the district as a whole.
It also allows them to postpone doing the demolition work and the mitigation stuff as well. So if you're struggling to keep the number lower for whatever reason, then you can sidestep that issue, and that's a significant number of dollars that you'll save in the short term.
Mm-hmm. And it also allows the print shop to remain as is in the short term too, without the need to spend money to relocate it to facilities or elsewhere. So we're looking at this site because it provides these long-term options, and it also increases the parking count compared to the option A. So then we look at this as a master plan and everything that we have heard over the last few months. And does this still check all the boxes to be able to move forward and look at this more investigatively? And we think that this does an excellent job. By putting that admin building and additional parking here, it allows for a full-size field hockey area, as well as an area for gym classes to be used throughout the day. It doesn't prohibit the ability to redevelop and relocate facilities if that's a decision that's made in the future. And it still gives this option to be able to renovate, remove, remodel, attach, not attach, and have some program in some fashion at the A site. Doing this does allow a connection for the future for whether this is going to be competitive field or multiple fields. And it even allows, you know, a space for a potential field house with concessions and restrooms if that's deemed to make this truly a more state-of-the-art athletic facility for you all. So looking at the B site, what could we do with this? What does that mean? So working with the existing grades, we're going to use as to our benefit instead of to the challenge. It was more challenging on the A site to utilize the grades because, as Rick mentioned, we're connecting to two different points at two different buildings. Here, we're really utilizing that existing grade change to our benefit in both design as well as constructability and cost. So keeping the upper parking lot and kind of expanding it slightly, placing the building here, we're looking at a pretty small footprint of a little less than 8,000 square feet. Let's see if there's a question. Peter, do you have a question?
Hey, buddy, I really need you to whisper, please. Sorry about that. And Jeff, this may be more of a question for you. With the ongoing tennis court project over at the West Campus, do we still need to preserve these tennis courts, or is that something that could be explored for additional parking or just more flexibility for the team here?
You know, that's a good question, Peter. And what we've heard from the middle school is that space is used significantly by their physical education program. So we have students out there during the day. It does provide a fenced-in area for them to do all kinds of different activities. So our original intent was try to preserve that as student space. But again, long-term planning and what we're going through here is not necessarily, you know, all of these projects are not necessarily tied to the immediacy of the admin center. So it's certainly in an area that we can work with the middle school on and keep an eye on.
Okay, thank you. I just remember Mike Noonan filling us in that I think because of maybe the elevation issues over there, that there's quite a bit of regular maintenance to kind of fill in cracks and resurface, and didn't know if this opened up some options.
Peter, just to reassure everybody, we looked pretty closely at the parking numbers. We can significantly increase the parking count with the scheme you see in front of you. And if later on you decide you want to bite a couple of courts off in order to put more up there, that can happen as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that you guys included that in the analysis.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And feel free, we should have mentioned this at the beginning. If there's any questions of what we're currently speaking on, feel free to interrupt. We don't mind, and we don't need to wait till the end to answer questions if there's something immediately that you guys want to ask.
One thing I'd like to touch on briefly is that Aaron spoke briefly about it, but the building in this scenario actually works as a retaining wall. So you sidestep the cost of a bunch of the retaining wall by using the foundation of the lower level of the building in order to retain soil. And the thing that's cool about that is you get a visitor's entry at the lower level that's very prominent and the first thing you see when you drive up. But the employee entry above can be a secondary entry that's just as nice as the one below by virtue of taking advantage of the grade.
Jennifer?
Yeah, very quickly. I assume that the whole picture of the two fields and the backfield and the front, this one is this. That's all just sort of place saving now. Those could be interchanged. The types of the dimensions of these, like if we were to go with building A, it says field hockey and area for gym. That could become a competition field. That could stay grass. There's a lot. That's just kind of show us options. Like you're not doing the building based on the fact that it's like this shape here and that shape here.
Absolutely not. What we're doing is making sure that we can fit the building with additional parking and still have a regulation field. And what does that mean with grading?
And so what would you recommend then? Because I see this competition field all the way sort of back. If you've walked that area, that needs to be probably regraded.
Yes, we're thinking that's part of the master plan.
The overall master plan.
About.
Okay, that's not really a safe walkable option for
right.
Yeah.
What I'd like to share is that the loop road, can you go back to the one with the loop road on it? The loop road actually gives you access back there in a way that you don't currently have.
Got it.
And there'd be some trees that have to be removed and some grading that would occur. But if you look at this drawing and then add on a concession stand, you have immediate access to all those fields, the tennis courts, the field you're looking at, and the new one that we think would be a turf field, long run. And so you'd have this hub that allows people that are disabled, for example, to get back there safely without worrying about the walk.
And you estimated this as about $400,000 over and above what you would need to do.
This area right here, this is more of the master plan long-term.
Got it, but just in terms of just this first field.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Correct.
Got it. All right.
Yeah. So just what you see on this current screen is what we priced in our cost estimate.
And the loop road is something that Rick broke out in his number that you could sidestep that in the short term if you're really trying to hold your numbers down. So there's a lot of flexibility built into this. And by the way, the loop road is drawn as something that's one-way traffic, but it's wide enough for 2 lanes. And what that means is that you can use that for parallel parking over its length. So when you have an evening or weekend event, when you have people to get to the fields back there, there's places for them to park conveniently that's closer to the field.
So also of that, we're showing that 3-story at that lower square footage of 21.3, and we'll see a test fit here in a minute of how the program fits within this space, being more efficient and not having to work with existing conditions. But what I also want to point out is that gives an additional lower parking lot, on the other side of this retaining wall, that it splits. All told, we haven't laid out, fire truck turnaround and all the things, but all told, I think between the upper parking lot and lower parking lot that we're calling, we're gaining about 90 to 100. Not gaining, we'll have a total of 90 to 100 parking spots.
And there's still some flexibility built into that. If the number, I had promised early on, we're going to do a car-by-car parking count for the campus and determine the numbers right. And if we have to add to that parking, you can see there's still green area above the employee entry there that we could pack additional parking into if needed.
We are trying to be mindful of keeping that landscape buffer between this and the residential across high-down lanes. We also did a preliminary meeting with the fire department to see how they feel about this layout with access in both rescue method as well as a firefighting method. And we've designed this, we've widened the loop road per their request to be able to get a truck. They like the idea of having this loop road to be able to circulate all the way around. Our ask was Typically, they like to be able to access the full front of the building, all four sides, but we felt that putting pavement in front of this, again, north is to the right, so it would be the east side of the building, would interfere with the field and the games and the function of the space. They're a complete agreement. They're being very flexible with this and willing to work. And if the loop road becomes a secondary phase, just so you guys are aware, they have access to build this little portion. So they do have access to the north side of the building if needed. Again, we're already kind of looking at this from a myriad of different ways to make sure that it works with the authorities, with the campus, with the overall master plan, as well as with your all's program. And what I really like about this option, as you guys will see here, again, massing and grading only. So we've developed a box that is the size and the height of what we're envisioning. You start to see how that building turns into a retaining wall to keep an upper and a lower parking lot that works with the current grade of the slope of the road. It does stand 2 stories on the west side, and it's the full 3 stories down. What I like about this position on the campus is the administration center gets a view of the entirety of campus that you're beginning to see. You know, facilities department is down here. You'll be able to have a view of over both fields, the existing building, whatever that may be, and then the current middle school.
And just to interject for a second, don't be concerned about the expanse of that building has no windows or anything on it. That's just a massing model to tell you how it sits on the site. That will be an open and inviting thing that you see when you drive up to it.
Mm-hmm. Another view, if you're a bird's eye looking over the top, how that field and that parking lot start to come together. You start to see the loop road in the background as it's rising up. Tennis courts behind. Again, this is just a site and massing and grading to understand how that building is fitting within the entirety of this area. How does it work out internally? Do we fit all of the functions that are absolutely necessary? That's a yes. Do we have some amenities still that have been asked for? That's a yes. And how does it lay out in terms of public versus private? So coming in, this would be that lower parking lot level. That would be directly south of the building. Coming in to a secure vestibule. One thing that was asked was, can this building in the short term be utilized for athletic restrooms, evenings and weekends? If the building, could the building remain closed and locked to the general public, but the students and the visitors still have access to restrooms? And so we are showing that as a capability of your having a doorway to a multi-stall restroom directly off your secure vestibule that you could leave open during evenings and weekends, while this barrier and this barrier remain locked and closed. So those students do have access to facilities, water fountain, all the things that they need directly from the fields.
Aaron and I talked about this yesterday. I think there's an alternative spot for those restrooms at the second floor level on the north side of the building. That would be adjacent to the tennis courts and to the area. They'd have to, from the field, they'd have to go up a half flight or a flight of stairs to get to it. The case I would make is that more glass on that side of the building where the restrooms are is a more inviting thing to have people see as they drive up to the building. We all know what the doors into a bathroom look like, and they're not typically a design feature. So I think we're going to look at different options for how to account for that restroom that we all know you need to support the fields. And Aaron plugged it in there as a placeholder so you understand it will fit and work.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for both, and we'll continue to investigate during design. Absolutely. Here, public area, facing area. Visitor comes in, has a nice 2-story glass surround entryway, open stair that leads you, that you could see all the way up. Our boardroom functions are large archable partitions that can bisect this boardroom into a few different ways to use for community development, professional development, large scale meetings. Seats shown, not including the dais, is 142 in this scheme right here, just to give you guys a sense of scale. Again, providing some meeting areas right off the main entry lobby for those that need to come in and out real quickly. Back a house that would be built into the side of the hill, the storage, the mechanical, the sprinkler, all the utilities that are needed to make the building run. And then again, as we go up, this is what we're calling the middle level. This is the level that's accessible from the upper parking lot that we would consider employee entry. But again, providing a secure vestibule if it's continued to choose to have more of a private entry for visitors as well. And then again, creating what we're calling more public, louder area where you have meeting rooms that could look down into the space below, break area, wellness rooms, the things that this is more of a what we call open gather, closed public. So this isn't meant to be more of the private side. This over here would be more of the private side when we start to get into the office and the departmentals and workroom, storage, additional meeting room, a pair of restrooms on each floor, kind of with that elevator and stairs separating the two for this floor. And then upstairs on the third level, and similar to the last scheme, this becomes more of the private office suites. There will be some meeting rooms, but again, more office private, not public private areas that are needed. But we get our office count, we get a nice meeting room count, we get the open office, we get the things that are needed in this square footage. Because we're able to push and pull for new construction, and we're not working within existing conditions of a building, nor are we working within a confined space between two buildings that we have to meet. So we are able to utilize a smaller square footage. And then I didn't know if you guys wanted to look at that cost estimate again, now that you've seen B1 in its entirety and compare all of that.
Can you go back to the site models that you built? Because I think that's it looks understated, but it really has the potential to be a pretty elegant building.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when that gets, like I said, it's not designed, it's just a placeholder for now. And it may not be quite square, it may be a little bit more rectangular. There's different things we can do with the geometry to make some of the things we're talking about work better. But I think that steps aside from the rest of the building, and at the end of the day, you get to think over time what you want to do with the existing school, which is a big deal. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. I remember when we were going through all four options earlier, and one of the concerns that was raised with the B location was for the height of the building for the neighbors on the other side of the trees. Do you anticipate this being an issue, or the fact that one of the levels will be sort of subgrade will kind of help mitigate whatever that visual impact is?
That will certainly
any sort
happen.
of kind of, like, you know, for lack of a better word, any kind of NIMBY pushback.
I think that does help. And by the way, Aaron just dropped in the parking area, but there's landscaping in and along that parking area as well. And some of the choices we make about how the building is appointed on the outside will make it more or less prominent, and we'll tone it down on that side. The thing that they'll be most concerned about, more than the building, will be whether there's parking lot lighting or not. So we'll have to be careful about how we manage that, and the lighting will have to be directional and not something that glares at them. But I think we can offset those needs.
Yeah. No, and that brings up another thing. And once again, this, I guess, this doesn't have to be addressed now since it's more part of the master plan, but it just makes me think about it, because now it's pretty dark out by 4 o'clock. If there's any opportunity to have lighting on the building, or at least provide the wiring in it in the mechanical or in the electrical planning, that could shine a light on that field, not where it could, you know, we're not talking about stadium lights, but where it would be safe for kids and parents to finish practice, particularly when we get into these months in the year and it's pretty dark pretty early.
I think that's a completely reasonable thing for us to look at. And the building actually will do some screening. The neighbors will not like lighting that's going to glare at them. But if you use the building as a screen element, then you can offset that some.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you.
They make fixtures these days that are really good about keeping the light down and focused on where you're designing and limiting that kind of halo effect. But we can always utilize parking lot fixtures on this lower lot that also have an angled element that directs it to a portion of the field too.
Okay.
Pablo, did you have a question?
Peter's question were exactly my questions around the height. And again, I think to Greg's point around how we can appoint that. First of all, it'd only be two stories. And I think that the thought about how we appoint that so it blends in is great. So I appreciate the question.
Robert?
You're muted.
We can't hear you.
You're muted.
Okay, there we go. Now,
There
I just had a question about the cost of maintaining the old admin center until we figure out what to do with it. I mean, it could be years before we decide, oh, it should be added to the middle school or a community education center or something like that. I suspect the cost could be significant in keeping out mold and keeping it sealed and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think from the information we got from Mike Noonan, I think the roof on the building is newer and the windows. So, I mean, there would be an annual maintenance cost, and that's something we could work on between, us and our engineers and kind of establish what we think like an annual budget would be to maintain that.
The best part about keeping it though is that you guys get to stay there and work in that building while the other building's being constructed and safely. And so your timeline is going to go down by probably almost as much as 6 months, and you're going to save a bunch of money as a result.
Makes sense. I'm just always a little nervous about maintaining derelict buildings or with an indefinite future. Thank you.
Thanks.
I also want to add too, while we're still processing, this is a lot of information, which is why we wanted to get it out early. The other thing that we're going to do is it will be posted on the agenda on the district website, and we'll go ahead and we'll send the presentation as well as the cost estimates to everybody ahead of time so that you can process offline and continue the dialogue on Monday, because our intent will be to review all of the slides at a much more abridged version. We won't spend as much time on the slides, but recap, talk through, and then address any additional questions we have at that point in time. Because we are not pressing for a decision or a determination, but we are at that point where in order to move on to the actual design phase, we will need to make a decision at some point if we want to proceed with the A site and or the B site, or how we want to proceed. So we do believe that we're at a point right now where we have the good information. We could continue to refine some of the estimates, but we do believe that we're in a place that we're going to need to provide direction in order to move out of the pre-design phase and into the design phase.
Jeff, I think Amy has a question.
Yeah, Amy.
Yeah, thanks. Just so that I can categorize or figure out where we are and all the options that we've presented. And I really appreciate all the thought that's gone into this. Way back, or maybe not so way back, we had talked about an option C, which was over by where the facilities building was, and doing a new construction over there. And as I recall, we all generally looked at it and that seemed cost prohibitive as a new construction. I'm just trying to figure out how, I mean, I'm going to be transparent. I like this option, but I'm just trying to figure out how we got to this option being what appears to be so much more cost effective than before. Is it demolition? I'm just trying to remember how we have this like seemingly miraculous solution now that involves a new construction, whereas before it seemed that dealing with option, the A location, did seem more reasonable at the time that we were evaluating these 3 locations.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, so the option C option has a lot of, I mean, you have to demolish that building, and then there's the cost of relocating facilities somewhere else, that would have to happen. And also kind of as a separate pre-project, that would have to happen before you could even build on that site. So I guess with both options A and C, you do have existing buildings and utilities and just restraints, where once we go out more onto the unused part of, or not unused, but areas where there's no construction, no buildings, it's a little easier. There's no demolition, there's no abatement, there's not as many underground utilities, those sorts of things that come into play, and you're getting down to just building a new building, So you're saving a lot on the demolition and relocation and temporary, even option A, depending on which one we do, there's, either you're living in the building, or you have to have a temporary, place to live for a year and a half or whatever it is. So that's what's helping option B to become more economical than the others.
Okay.
Rick, I'd like to add one thing to it as well. I mean, as architects, we don't like destroying buildings that can be repurposed. Of course, a starting point, there's an adage that says the greenest building is one you don't tear down. And so the starting point is always, well, let's try and use what's there to offset some of your costs. But it turns out that site is so restrictive that all of the variables that go into making it work add to the cost in a way that we would have preferred not, but do.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to your kind of question about B all of a sudden becoming more available, I think it was looking at it's generally cheaper to build a single or 2-story than to build multiple stories. So when we were initially looking at the B site, we were working with a larger square footage. We were taking it directly from the program at that 26,000, and we were trying to be apples to apples with A, and kind of spreading it out a little bit more with A, thinking that that would be the most cost impactive for the B site. Going back and sharpening our pencils and really looking at it with fresh eyes was we can do a smaller footprint at 3 stories and really work with the grade. What does that get us? And that's where we're starting to see some of these cost-effective measures that are a little bit more pronounced.
Great, that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Amy. And Corrigan Clark team, could you also put some thought into, prior to Monday, what you think the disruption is going to look like on the site in terms of what portion of the field we might lose for student access, student use throughout the construction, maybe any interruption to any of the existing parking? Now, I know that we can't pinpoint everything at this point in time, but just garnering some understanding of what the disruption could be to the site throughout this process, I think would help everybody understand the concept as well.
Sure. Yeah, we could we'll get in contact with our civil engineer. One thing that we've asked him, and we should talk to him today or tomorrow, is we do, as everyone's aware, we need to do some water retention for MSD best practice water management.
And there's one other thing regarding the contractors. The question you ask is a good one, and we can certainly look at it and try and figure out what the right way to do it. But every contractor is going to have their own opinion of the most efficient way to do what they're going to do. So at the point where we get there, they're going to offer some other ideas that may cause that thing to vary a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So we are asking the engineer to look at potentially this new parking spot. And originally we were planning it under the field. That's a simple, easy solution that seems first point to place it. But if in order to maintain more of the field for a longer time, seeing as if we can fit that square footage under this new parking lot that we're creating, that could give you guys a boost in the availability of square footage that could be utilized during construction.
Thank you. And Greg, also too, I know you mentioned timeline and where we're at in pre-design. And I know we've worked through a more extensive pre-design than we anticipated in order to manage some of the costs and come up with a cost-effective solution. So not to necessarily get into it today because we want to honor everyone's time, but can we be prepared to talk a little bit more about what that timeline looks today versus the start of the pre-design at our meeting on Monday?
Yes, we can do that. And just to reiterate what I had said a little bit earlier, you're going to move out of bidding in April perhaps and to later in the summer. And that extra 3 months is going to take you out of that really tight bidding climate that you have where everybody's trying to get into the ground at the same time. So you're likely to get better numbers a little bit later in the summer. So the fact that we were more considerate and worked harder at these questions up front is going to pay dividends in that regard as well.
Is there any other questions or comments?
Jeff, I just want to chime in. This is Jim. Corrigan Clark, thank you. I think you gave a lot of information. I want to also reiterate what was already stated, that the purpose of the meeting today was so that we could hear the information, learn from the information, and then at our meeting on the 24th, we'll probably have some additional questions. I do appreciate your leadership, Jeff, in this, and Corrigan and Clark, thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else before I assume this is the end of the presentation, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to cut you off. Any other questions before we adjourn?
I'd like one thing to comment about. You can let us know whether you want us to attend the Monday meeting or not. We can provide any materials you need to flesh out what we've got to make your discussion a full one. But if you want one or several of us to be there to support you in that conversation, we're happy to do that for you.
Yeah, Greg, I'll just speak up. I had anticipated on having the team there just for the technical support and just, questions are going to come up. I mean, this is a lot of information for anyone, and we've been engaged in this process for a long time. So I do anticipate a rich dialogue with questions.
Happy to be there.
Great. We'll look forward
Sorry,
to
and I just wanted to throw one thing, and this is not for right now. This is just for the upcoming board meeting. Robert made a really good point about, the idea of it being a derelict building, the current admin center. I know it was mentioned that the print center could stay in there, and so for the upcoming board meeting, any sort of residual or temporary value that we could continue to get out of the existing admin building once a new one is built, I think it would just help, to show that it's not just going to be, some sort of cost center that just sits there and produce.
That's true. Ultimately, you can demolish the building if you want. I mean, if that's what it comes down to, because it's.
Oh, but I was just saying that in terms of using it for the print center, what else could we get out of that building that maybe, if there's current storage in the 5th grade center that is taking up space, could that be moved to the admin? And just to show that this is not going to be a useless building once a new one is built, what more could be gained from the capacity that would be created in this building? I think it would be helpful to explore that a little bit.
And Peter,
As
I think
part of the whole picture.
that's probably a really good. I think Jeff. I don't want to be more of a district presentation, probably in terms of that. And Jeff, a cost estimate. It will be obviously detailed perfection, whatever I'm trying to say. It's early, but a cost estimate of just the maintenance of that building. Also, because we'll keep that in mind in terms of adding that annually to our maintenance expense.
Yeah, Peter, that's a great question, and that's why we have Mike on the line. Mike and I preliminarily started discussing that, so we could certainly have some options as to what it looks like to, shut off utilities, drain water lines, things of that nature, and or occupy a portion of the building, not all of the building, to reduce some of the stress on the utilities. So we have already begun preliminarily working through that. And, the best part about this presentation is that master planning concept. is that when we look at this site, where we started looking at an admin center, and now we've potentially developed some phases and some opportunities that could be something that we look at now, could be something that we look at, 2-3 budget cycles down the road. So it really does now expand the analysis of the entire site. Keisha?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we've explored all the possible environmental concerns. I know that, we've talked about grading with the fields and things of that nature, but are there any other potential environmental issues that may arise with demolition and or new construction of the new admin center?
Yeah, well, that is something we actually looked at. That's another small piece that why the option, the A's went up, is that over the past month, we did get an estimate from the farmers, the school district's environmental engineer, and I think it was about a little bit over $200,000, and that is plugged into the estimates that we shared, which is making the numbers. So I think we feel we've covered at least for the A option, the cost of any abatement, environmental, demolition. We think we have that covered pretty well. And then we are waiting to get the survey. That'll give us more information on what's under the ground. I mean, we had a survey from PropL on kind of, what I'm gonna say, the left half, I guess the south half of the site. We don't have as much information on the other part, but we're not expecting much, but we'll see what we get when the survey is complete. So as we're getting more information, we're able to kind of know more and estimate better.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions? And welcome, all questions welcome and to be answered. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time and the morning hour, since people probably have to go to work. Okay. Seeing none, we will see the Cordigan and Clark team on Monday evening. So if you have more questions, certainly reach out to Jeff, and we'll also have them answered over at the presentation on Monday. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Keisha.
If you have questions in the interim period, you could forward them to us so we could get you a full answer on Monday.
Great. And Peter had the second. Thank you, Greg. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.